Welcome back, everybody. This is Aretha in New York City, Ground Zero. I hope you can hear me. This video is about Ray Charles. I've watched two comedians perform a joke about Stevie Wonder. The first was Jamie Foxx, who is an excellent character impersonator. He was sharing a story about Mike Tyson getting upset, and Stevie Wonder was also in the room at the time. And rightfully sensing danger, he became agitated. However, due to his blindness, the flight response was not appropriate in the situation, so Fox tried to calm him down. The joke was hilarious and a must watch. I'm not a comedian and I was not trying to tell a joke. The second was by Dion Cole. The joke was equally funny, but what caught my attention was that it was a disability positive joke. Cole told a story about taking a woman to a Stevie Wonder concert, and after taking her backstage to meet Stevie, Cole was given $100 to take a taxi to go home by himself. To add insult to injury, when he posted negatively about Stevie's action, Stevie bullied him into taking down his negative post. Cole's portrayal of Stevie focused on his humanity, aka he was just a man like other men and not his blindness. I'll be using that kind of disability positive approach towards Ray Charles, which focuses on his abilities and his personality, especially because Charles himself stated that the inability to hear is a handicap, not the inability to see, and went as far as creating a foundation supporting hearing disorders. So Ray Charles was born Ray Charles Robinson on September 23rd, 1930, in Albany, Georgia. He was otherwise known as the Genius and the father of soul music. Some of his awards between 1962 to 2004, he won 13 Grammy Awards. In 1986, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In 1993, he won the National Medal of Arts. He's credited as the pioneer of soul music, which is a blend of gospel, rhythm and blues, and jazz. He started his musical career at the age of 5, playing piano in a neighborhood cafe in Greenville, Florida. Also, he refused to confine himself to one musical genre and experienced success doing so. So he even had a country album. So let me get deeper. Based on the scales that judges trauma, there's a scale, it's called Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale. We call it ACEs. Based on that scale, Charles had a very traumatic upbringing. The following are some of his suspected traumatic experience based on me assessing him. Before he was 7, he saw his 4-year-old brother die in a laundry tub, though he tried to save him. So imagine that, trying to save your brother and seeing your brother die. And you yourself, not even 7. Shortly after this, he started going blind and had his right eye removed before he was 7, and then he was totally blind. Again, to go from seeing to not seeing, very difficult. And he was again separated from his mother and sent to St. Augustine School for the Blind, where he learned to read Braille and play piano, clarinet, and saxophone. Another sign of early trauma, Charles's father, Bailey Robinson, was a railroad mechanic and a handyman. And Charles reported that his father was hardly ever around. He did not recall seeing him much. His father, Robinson, died when Charles was only 10-year-old, also a traumatic thing. Aretha Robinson was his mother. She was a sharecropper, and she also washed clothes for white people. She died when he was 15, another trauma. And he was forced to leave school at the age of 15 and start working, and he took jobs playing piano on what they call the Chitlin Circuit in the South. So there we have it. Quite a lot of trauma. If we need to look on the bright side first, as we're taught, is to look for the positive strength base. We can attribute Charles's skill of showing strong emotions in his music to living with his traumatic experiences. On the harmful side, he treated his unprocessed trauma with heroin and remained addicted to heroin for 30 years. His addiction was so severe that in the latter years, according to his close friend Quincy Jones, he allegedly had someone whose job it was to inject heroin into his testicles because all the other veins were useless. He went to rehab only when law enforcement made quitting heroin a condition for getting his license to play in the clubs. So until they told him he couldn't play in the clubs anymore, he was just taking heroin, and he successfully quit. Quincy Jones said, after Charles stopped abusing heroin, he had a coffee and gin addiction. This is quite understandable because addictions are diseases, and it's a disease trying to cope with trauma or some other thing that's going on. Another unhealthy coping method that he used was that he used his celebrity status as an opportunity to have many sexual relationships with women. Some of these relationships were while he was married. In the end, he had 12 children with 10 different women. After his death, some of these children and mothers litigated over their inheritance, like they were fighting over his legacy. I also did not observe any of them on his children, that is, on his official website, just his business manager, who listed himself as the man behind the man, which is quite weird because Ray Charles is a man unto himself, like no other man made him. But my thing, I wonder whether Charles's children said similar words to what he said, Ray Charles said about his father. I hardly saw him. Because his touring, because of his lifestyle, having all those children living elsewhere, did they also experience what he experienced? Further, there's a scene in Ray the movie when Ray's second wife, Della, played by Kerry Washington, gave birth to his son. And Jamie Foxx, playing Ray, asks, can he see? He wanted to know whether he had passed on his blindness, a condition which the real-life Ray Charles stated is not an impairment, as I previously said. So my question was not about the blindness, but did Ray Charles pass on his trauma, his unaddressed trauma, to his children? So the key takeaways that I have, again, is unaddressed traumas will harm your body and relationships. Poor coping strategies will make this worse. So it's necessary for all of us to do the inner work so we don't harm ourselves and we don't harm the next generation. Thank you for listening. Now have a breath because that was heavy.